Alright, what's up everybody? We're back real quick with just a short video on our Prime Gold cartridge here. So, what we had was just a Super DSP or SNES to SD or EverDrive card. At the time, I used to actually just run a regular Super Nintendo. So, all we did with this was just purchase this. You know, they're super cheap to get a lot of games on an SD card. And I used to run this on my Super Nintendo up until I ended up actually selling that. Just because I had it for forever and a day, and I always just liked the look of the Super Famicom a lot more. Now what happened is these cartridges don't fit in a Super Famicom. They do make adapters for these, but they end up sticking up above the top of the cartridge about that far, where they sit on top, and then this just looks really silly sitting out of the top. And at the time when I was doing that, those adapters, I know they've come down a lot. There's a lot of people that 3D print them now, and you can pick them up anywhere between, like, if they're in stock, which I've rarely seen, right around like 25 bucks, but they average somewhere typically between like $60 and $100 for the adapters to be able to slap one of these into a Super Famicom. So what we did was we just opened this up. This is actually the Prime Gold game, Prime Gold 2 game. We just opened this up and ripped the board out of it. And you can just pretty much kind of do this with almost any of the flash carts for these. And I didn't want to go through and buy another flash cart for the Super Famicom because, again, at the time when I was doing this, those were up and kind of ran a premium on them just because of the differences in the cartridges. The angles, the sides, everything, they just don't fit into them. So what I did was I bought the cheapest Japanese game that you can get for the Super Famicom, which happened to be Prime Gold 2. At the time, I paid $5 for this, which was actually cheaper than a blank empty cartridge. And for these, you will need the smaller game bit driver. But it was cheaper than, you know, blank empty cartridge that I could have 3D printed one, but I really didn't want to go through the hassle of doing that. Plus, you never get the outside to look exactly right. So what we did was we just opened this up, took the game out, we cut the post off of the back of it right here, the front piece of the actual cartridge, cut the post off because that does stick down. We ground out a little section right here for where the SD card mounts to fit in there. Same thing on the other side, just made a little slot. Tried to keep it nice, tight, and clean. There was a bit of plastic that needed to be cut off here because that does stick up a little far, and here on there. And then across the bottom right here, there was a piece that stuck up a little bit higher because we wanted to get this in here to mount nice and tight. The little tabs at the top were the exact same to help hold that in. But this has the offset tabs here, and that was kind of part of why we ended up cutting this out, because these sections don't exist on the Famicom games, but they do on the US ones. I shouldn't say all Famicom games, but they don't exist. They exist on the US ones for cartridge alignment, and it had the extra plastic bits right here, so we ended up cutting those out. And then we just lined it up and made a little slot right there. It didn't need to be that deep, but just wanted to make sure we had extra room on there. Same thing with this side. Took this, slapped that in, so that way I could get to the actual card slot and everything, and then just ended up screwing the entire thing back together. So not that this is really a huge feasible option on, like, hey, if you want to move your Super Nintendo games, not, you know, a flash cart over, it'd be kind of an expensive thing to do. One of those adapters might be a good option for you. But if you just have a flash cart, that's your primary thing you're using, and you just want a real cheap case for it and a way to get it to fit into your Super Famicom, hit up eBay, find the cheapest Japanese game that you can find, get it sent out, and literally cut a small slot in the front, a little bit of plastic trimming on the inside, drop it in and get it to fit. And it's cheaper than ending up buying one of the little adapters, and these still sit in there perfectly fine. And you know what, they're not region locked, so it just works. Like a lot of Nintendo's region locks up to, I think it was the GameCube, were all literally, the region locks were all physical locks. Nothing was actually software or hardware based. Like I said, pick up a cheap one, just swap the board over to a little bit of modification on the inside, and you can literally save yourself, 10, 20, 30, 40, 60, $70, depending on your availability, where you live at, and that. But just simple board swap, and get it all in there, get it to fit, pop it in your Super Famicom. Looks just like any other game if you had it sitting out on your shelf. So, if you got more games than this sitting out there, you can still shove this in with your collection, and nobody would be the wiser sitting there going, oh, you have a flash cart sitting on your shelf. It doesn't stick out like a sore thumb, still looks original, except for the fact that the SD card pokes out the top, but if you pull it off, you'd never know until you're looking down. Anyways, that's just our short little modification of what we did to this to get ours to fit in there without needing to buy an adapter, and it was cheaper to do this than it was to get an adapter. Thanks for stopping in, and have a good night.